self-awareness, and be great to know, I don't know why my iPad's doing this today, be great to know who managed to listen to the podcast this week. You don't have to have listened to the podcast, but I'd love to know. Let me know what, if you did listen, what stuck, perhaps other than Sarah and me talking to each other about us at our best and us at our worst. Let me know anything that stuck. This is the pod sheet, by the way. If you haven't seen our pod sheets before, we do them every week for the podcasts. And they're kind of like a downloadable summary. You can get them from the website. Best and worst. Yeah, okay, brilliant. Best and worst. Well, you have to do this. If you like this exercise, you have to do this. Do it with someone that you trust, I'd say. Feedback friends. Yeah, the story of Bruce. The story of Bruce. Bruce is a brilliant feedback friend. The what questions. Yeah, I'm going to summarize those ones in a second. Oh, Tanya, you have done it. Let us know how that compared, how your thoughts about your best and worst compared to what someone played back to you. Daily questions, the what questions. Yeah, so we're going to just recap on some of those. Feedback buddy. Thinking traps. Yeah, thinking traps, John, is a big part of the new book. So we've got this like toolkit in the new book of kind of coaching tools that come up in every chapter. And at the start of each chapter, we go through, like we've got a chapter on resilience, for example, a chapter on time, and we go through some of the most common thinking traps and then turn them into positive prompts for you. It might not be your specific thinking trap, but it kind of gets you started on that process of what's the thoughts that could be getting in my way and how could I reframe them. So I'm glad that worked. Brilliant. Okay, good. A range of stuff has stuck. Ouch, however, very accurate. That's Tanya on her feedback. Yeah, I think it's not always, I mean, self-awareness isn't easy. So for anyone that hasn't listened, actually, I'm just going to pick up exactly on the point that Sarah has just put in chat there, that the reminder that it's internal versus external. I think quite a lot of the time when we think about self-awareness, I think the default is that it's about your knowledge of yourself, because it sort of sounds like that, right? It's quite literal, self-awareness, knowledge of self. But actually, when you look at the definition of self-awareness, it's exactly what Sarah has said in chat. It's this mixture of internal self-awareness, how well I know myself, and external self-awareness, how well I understand how I am perceived. And true self-awareness is when those things come together. And so that's why some of these things like feedback friends become so important. Great share by there from Sarah as well in the chat, a different Sarah. Oh, I love that we've replaced my Sarah with lots of other Sarahs in the chats. So easy to replace her. Don't tell her that, she won't watch this back. So what I want to do is just summarize the 6 different things that we talk about, just that we're on the same page. And also for anyone that didn't have the opportunity to listen to the podcast, do not worry, because we're going to recap these now. So the first one was the one that Lucy said. So the first way that you can prompt your self-awareness is by asking yourself a series of what questions at the end of every day. So the point here, and this comes from Tasha Urich's work on self-awareness. Tasha's going to be on our podcast in next year, talking about self-awareness. I always think about go-to gurus. She's my go-to guru on self-awareness, Tasha Urich. And I've got a survey from her website that I'm going to show you in a second, which is quite useful to do. But she talks about the importance of what questions. So what was I motivated by today? What was I frustrated by? What gave me the most energy? What created some feelings of self-doubt today? The what questions, because she said we often default to why. Why am I feeling like that? Why did they happen? But actually, when we get into the what, we get some specific insights for our self-awareness. So even if you just take a week and you do a week of what, that might be quite a useful little investment in your self-awareness, just to sort of see what thoughts it might prompt for you. So that's the first kind of one we talked about, the idea of kind of diving a little bit into your what's. The second thing, lots of you have mentioned this, but this is your feedback friends. Think of this as, if you want any more alliteration in your life, I'm here for you. Critics that care. This is sort of radical candor in action. This is people who care personally about you. They know what you're about. They know what you want to achieve, but they are willing to challenge you directly. They don't beat around the bush. They can be very clear. They can be very challenging. We talked about Bruce on the podcast, who is the host of the Eat, Sleep, Work, Repeat podcast, and always gives us very direct feedback. But what we didn't talk about is Sarah. I have at least 2 feedback friends, Bruce and Sarah. Sarah is one of the best people that I know for clear as kind feedback. It doesn't mean it doesn't always hurt. Sometimes it's quite direct, but she doesn't pull her punches at all. She's the first person that I would go to if I thought, well, do you know what? I need someone to create a bit of clarity for me here, because I'm either skirting around a problem or I'm not addressing the issue. Sarah, she cares about me, and she's direct enough to sort of deliver without emotion. That's what you want. If I'm honest, I don't think I'm a brilliant feedback friend, because I try to get the balance right, but sometimes I care personally more than I'm able to challenge directly, which if you do look into Kim Scott's work on radical candor, is called ruinous empathy. So it's not a brilliant place to be, everybody. But again, in the spirit of self-awareness, I'm aware that Sarah actually plays that role better than me. So it's an area of development. But just think about who knows you well enough, because they've got to know you to care personally about you. They know you well, they care about you. They've got to have that insight into you and what you're about and where you want to go. And then basically has that clear is kind ability. They sort of deliver without emotion. They don't let this might hurt someone's feelings, or how will they respond. They don't let that cloud their clarity in the messages they give you. They are invaluable people. Just let them know that what they do is useful for you, so they can stay in that mode. So hopefully, out of interest, has anyone got, who are people's feedback friends? So for example, mine is my business partner, and I've known Sarah for a long time. She's a feedback friend in my personal and professional life. I was just going to say this is a very personal story. A long time ago, I had a boyfriend who I wasn't sure if it was right. And I said to Sarah, we were in Nottingham, and I was like, at the moment I start to make a fool out of myself, let me know. And she was like, now? And I was like, okay, thanks for that feedback. So yeah, she's good at it personally and professionally. So my dad is a feedback friend for me. I love that. An ex-colleague, Heidi, I really like the thought of, sometimes when we squiggle around in our career, we can sometimes leave people behind, but actually thinking how they can come with you as like a feedback friend or a mentor is brilliant. In personal life, yeah, Marie, I mean, if they've got that ability for you, maybe giving them a window into your professional life, they may be able to extend that role into it, a bit like Sarah does for me. She kind of plays it on both. Probably my husband, Maria says, brilliant. And your great ex-colleague, I like their kind of ex-colleague thing, just thinking about how they can maybe play a new role, a new relationship in your world today. My father-in-law, who's a retired CEO, and finish and blunt, ticking all the boxes, Steve. Fantastic. The third one we talked about, which no one actually mentioned, was the idea of kind of these self-awareness scenarios. And this is where you can really challenge some assumptions or remove some constraints in your thinking and sort of going, what would I do if? And it can help you to get out of the day-to-day detail and see how you might respond with things are different. So we talk about in the podcast, if someone gave you £10 million or an arbitrary big number of money, whatever, but someone gave you a lot of money, how would you spend your time? How would you spend your time? Like, I would keep working. I'd be like, buy myself a nice house, go on holiday, and then I'll keep working. And that is because if I think about my internal self-awareness, achievement and growth is so important for me. And so sort of any money that you would throw at me, that would still drive me. But that's the sort of thing that we are trying to understand about ourselves. So take away time constraints, take away people constraints, take away financial constraints, and think, what would you do if? What would you do if the company that you were in was no longer here tomorrow? What would you do? What would you do? What would you do if your best friend wanted to partner with you on a business? I don't know, just think about these scenarios. It's the what would you do if. In those responses, particularly if you ask yourself a few different self-awareness scenarios, you can often see some consistencies. So for example, if my best friend, I have a couple of very close friends, one of them's called Kay, if she wanted to run a business with me, I'd be like, brilliant, let's start it tomorrow. Again, because growth and achievement and energy are very important to me, I'd buy a website and launch a business in about 12 hours. But it gives you that insight into yourself. So it's just a way of prompting your reflections. Again, no one mentioned this one, but this is about mistakes monitors. It's a bit of self-compassion in this one as well, but it's about learning from your mistakes rather than moving on from them too quickly. mistakes are a great source of data for our development, and we just need to think about, when are they happening, why are they happening, what's causing them, what can I learn from it, how does it make me feel? All of those lovely open questions, they are a mine for those mistakes, so let's not move on from them too quickly. Just to kind of, I would think about, what mistakes have I made this week and what have I learned from them, is a useful prompt. Again, doing this with somebody else can deepen your reflections. Who was it who talked about, was it John who talked about thinking traps? I'm scrolling back up, I think it might have been. So thinking traps, these are the thoughts that hold us back. Very useful to tune into these, because we want to reframe thinking traps into positive prompts. So I think I talked about one of my thinking traps is like, I could do it quicker myself. I could do it quicker myself. It's a little mantra. I'll just do it is normally my thinking trap. Very useful to see how that might play out in other people's perceptions, like the impact of that on other people. And also letting other people know, like if that self-awareness, how you turn self-awareness into action. If I let other people know about my thinking trap, so Lucy, who is in the team, who's on Pod Plus, she's probably wave in a minute. Lucy's quite good at calling me on my thinking trap. So one of my thinking traps is, I'll just do it myself. It's quicker if I do it to myself. And knowing that about me, Lucy will often challenge me and say, is that the best use of your time? Is that the right thing for you to do? And it's quite useful if you are self-aware enough to know what your thinking traps are. If you share those with other people, they can often support them with you so they don't get in your way. So again, this is this blend between internal and external. Do other people see you, that thinking trap? Like, is that a very visible thinking trap? Which it might be if you speak what you think, but also they can help you so it doesn't hold you back. And then the last one, the one that I think people really liked, and the exercise that I do hope you do, I think Tanya's done this one, is you at your best and you at your worst. And the idea here, this is really the blend of the two, the internal and external. The idea here is you first think about, when do I think I'm at my worst at work, and when do I think I'm at my best, which is the internal awareness. And then you go and ask somebody that you trust, when do they think you're at your best and your worst, and you're kind of comparing the answers. Tasha Eurich would say that strong self-awareness is where you've got alignment, and it is interesting to see where you might not have alignment. Again, just go for the self-compassion here. You're not trying to beat yourself up. If you go, oh, I think I'm at my worst when I'm very focused on my to-do list, and you go and ask 5 people and they tell you 5 different things when you're at your worst, don't beat yourself up about, oh, gosh, I'm so much worse than I thought I was. The aim is not for that. The aim is just, the reflection would be, oh, maybe I've got some work to do on my self-awareness. That would be the reflection point. Are thinking traps linked to you at your worst? Mine definitely is. Possibly, Anya. I've not actually, I've not joined the dots enough to be able to say. I'd have to kind of think, what are all my thinking traps, and then me at my worst. I think I have some thinking traps that aren't connected to me at my worst, but I'd actually need to do a little bit more reflection on it to be able to answer. So they are the 6. Before we move on to, because of course you need even more ideas for us with the self-awareness, before we move on to 3 more that you might not have heard about yet, any reflections on any of that? Anything someone's like, oh, actually, I'm going to try that one out. I'm going to write down my thinking traps. I'm going to do a mistake monitor.
Quick question, actually, Helen, if that's all right.
Of course.
So with the thinking traps, so you were saying I could do it better or quicker myself. How do you stick with giving people responsibility for doing things when they prove that actually they haven't done it as well, or they didn't do it as quickly? How do you stop yourself from falling back into doing it yourself?
Back into the trap. So my positive prompt is, so the positive prompt is almost like a curious question. Thinking trap is basically a fixed mindset comment, like to yourself, I can do this better myself. Like, full stop, doesn't really help. A positive prompt is a more of a curious question that helps you kind of move forward. So I would reframe my thinking trap into more of a, how could the business grow better if other people took the work on? Something like that. It's not particularly eloquent. So with that thinking trap and shift to positive prompt, how could my business grow better if I gave other people the space to work on these things? Then I'm quite attached to business growing better. So even though, even like, sorry, Lucy, let's take this example just to make it real for everyone. This is like, Lucy's, I'm never coming on Pod Plus again. But let's say I kind of go, oh, I've been doing all this stuff myself. I've been setting up all Pod Plus on my own, and because I can just do it quicker. And then I might think, well, how could the business grow better if I gave Lucy the space to take some of the popular stuff on? And let's say I give Lucy the space and I think, well, it still kind of wasn't quite how I would do it. I would just see that as an opportunity for feedback for both of us, because I would say to Lucy, how, like, there's loads of different models. I would, with her feedback, one of my go-to models is the coin model. This is slightly disconnected from what we're talking about, but I'll just do it here. So the coin model, let's do the right pen. The coin model is context, observation, impact, next steps. So what I would try not to do, Heidi, is default back to going to do it myself. What I would do in between the kind of the action and my response is the feedback bit. So coin would be, what's the context? I'm trying to help the team grow better by giving people more space to succeed in their roles. Observations, I asked you to take over the session, and I'm not entirely sure that I gave you a full briefing of that. I think the impact was that it wasn't quite how I thought it was, but I'd like to get your perspective. Next steps, how can we both be comfortable with how this goes forward? Again, I'm talking pretty quickly through that. I would invite Lucy's perspective throughout, but I guess my point is I would use feedback as a way of having a conversation before I defaulted back to the original state. And coin is one of the most useful ways for me, as somebody who actually finds feedback quite hard. Coin is one of the best structures I find to gather my thoughts. So I don't know if that answers the question, Heidi.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Honestly, what I would do. Amal's going to do a week of what questions. Fantastic. Laura says, I've got a friend who runs her own business who struggles with this. I feel like you're all now giving me coaching on my thinking trap. Thank you, everybody. I tried to get her to know what letting someone else do enables her to do instead. Brilliant. Great. Yeah, exactly that. And again, it is not easy to just suddenly change your thinking overnight, but it's recognizing that the thinking trap holds you back, and then attaching yourself much, much more to that positive prompt, putting it somewhere like visible if you need to. Again, in the book, we've got loads of these positive prompts for like the specific areas. So for example, you might have a thinking trap about time, you might have a thinking trap about relationships, you might have a thinking trap about your purpose. There's loads of things to help you in that. Okay, 3 more things that can help you, everyone. Journaling. We didn't mention this on the podcast, but journaling is a really big part of increasing your self-awareness. I journal intermittently whenever I sort of feel like I'm in a fog. I should do it every day, actually, but I do it intermittently. So if I feel a bit foggy, I bring out my journal. I have tried the 5-minute journal. I quite like that because it's got prompts in it. So if you kind of just want to open a page and be led by a question that is in front of you, the 5-minute journal is a pretty good one. It's about 20 quid off Amazon. Probably a nice little Christmas present if you've got a self-reflective friend. I'm not on commission, but it's quite a nice one. What I actually do, I don't use that one as much now. I just have a Moleskine book and some nice pens, because that always motivates me to write neatly. And I just do like a stream of consciousness for a page. I just fill a page, and that's very like the what is a brilliant book by Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way, it basically just says like basically do a thought stream on paper and just write. So I just do a 1-page of a thought stream, and I find that helps me get to some clarity about what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling. But 5-minute journal is good. And this writer's journal is a new one from Emma Gannon. It's only been launched this week. Definitely inspired by The Artist's Way, but visually beautiful, and Emma's brilliant. So would love to support her work. Again, could probably make a really good Christmas present. Comes in 2 colors, lime and I think canary or something like that. But yes, so that's a good one. And Mind Journal is a good system to get started. Oh, I've not seen that one, Steve. I will have a look at Mind Journal. But how is the 6-minute journal different to the 5-minute journal? I wonder, Sarah. I wonder whether it's better. But yeah, I think they're just prompts and work out, I think, when the day is best for you. No idea. It's a bit bigger, maybe. Who knows? So that's the first thing. Journaling, really useful. I maybe experiment with it and see if it helps you. It helps me to get to clarity, particularly if I'm foggy. This is a tool that Tasha Eurich has on her website. So her book's called Insight. Again, good book. And as I said, she'll be coming on. I got Sarah to do this for me. You fill in some questions. You then send, it doesn't take long, it's 5 minutes. You then send it to somebody else who fills in your questions, and it kicks out this report. The report will assign you to one of 4 archetypes. I come out as a pleaser. So my external self-awareness is better than my internal self-awareness on this one. And then it gives you some information about that particular archetype, what you could do differently. Again, some quite good questions that you could ask yourself. To be honest, the questions that this kicks out you could use them as a journaling prompts as well. Like you could just take these if you wanted to not spend 20 quid. You could use this for a bit of journaling prompts. Brilliant, Lisa. Also on the back to the journal prompts, if you do like a journal, Papier do some quite nice ones for Christmas as well. That's the end of my marketing of journaling prompts. But yeah, this is quite a good tool. And again, if you did this with a colleague, it might just spark a conversation, you know, particularly with a feedback friend. This could be a good way of almost like starting the feedback friend relationship, going to somebody and asking them to fill this survey in for you. It's on Tasha Urich's website, which is just tashaurich.com. I should have written that on for you here, but let me just spell her name for you. Tasha Urich.com. Just go to the resources and it's down there. It won't take you long to do. There you go, Sarah. And then last but not least, situational self-awareness. This is quite sophisticated, but if you do want to do a little bit more, this is the idea of, I guess it's dissonance. So where there is a difference between the you that you want to show up as. So I want to be energizing, I want to be supportive, I want to be collaborative, like that's how I want to come across. And then the do, like how you actually come across in a situation. And this is quite sophisticated. What you really want is to have alignment between the you want to be and then how you basically show up in all different situations. You want consistency. What is really useful for you to sort of tune into is where there is inconsistency, when there's a sort of an element of dissonance between the you that you want to be and actually how you're showing up. So if I think about me, for example, I can sometimes get a little bit defensive. I can get a little bit agitated when things take too long. And that's not how I want to come across. The you I want to be is positive, energetic, supportive, and collaborative. So I know that there's a little bit of dissonance going on when I actually end up becoming a little bit, I'm not argumentative, but a bit, let's just move it on. Like I stop being collaborative, and it is worth you understanding. You're basically trying to understand what your triggers are so that you can do something different, because what we're aiming for is consistency. The you that you want to be is how you're showing up at work. Any point at where there's inconsistency, sometimes senior people can trigger it. Sometimes it could be a confidence gremlin. You know, you will have your own triggers, but it is worth tuning into the triggers so that you can have that consistency between how people perceive you and how you basically want to be perceived. That's what we're aiming for. So as I said, this is quite sophisticated. I would do the other bits first, like get the feedback and kind of do the journaling, and then think about, when is this version of me not what I show up as, and why? Because we want to have that consistency in what we do. So that was everything I was going to share with you today. I will stop sharing now. Let me know if you've got any questions.